For nearly a century, people have sworn they've seen something impossible moving through the dark waters of Loch Ness. A massive shape, a long neck, a monster the world came to call Nessie. Scientists have thrown sonar, submarines, and now even DNA testing at this lake. And just recently, the results finally came back. What they found shocked even the experts. But before I tell you the answer, you need to understand, this mystery didn't start with blurry photos or tourists with cameras. It started more than 1,400 years ago, with a man lying dead on a riverbank and a creature waiting beneath the surface. If you're fascinated by mysteries like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what we're about to uncover will change everything you thought you knew about the world's most famous monster. So yeah, let's go back to the year 565 AD. Scotland's Highlands were a wild, dangerous place. Celtic tribes told stories around fires about water demons called kelpies, shape-shifting creatures that would drag travelers into dark lochs and rivers. But this wasn't just folklore, you know? There were actual records. Saint Columba, a real historical figure, was traveling through the Scottish Highlands when he came across something that would haunt the region for over 1,000 years. According to the ancient text Life of Saint Columba, he found locals burying a man who'd been savagely killed by some kind of water beast in the River Ness. Now here's the thing, when Columba ordered one of his followers to swim across that same river, the creature came back. The text describes it rising from the depths with a tremendous roar, mouth wide open, ready to attack. Columba made the sign of the cross and commanded the beast to retreat. And apparently, it did. Okay, so you might think this is just religious storytelling, right? But here's what's wild, this wasn't some random lake. This was the River Ness, which flows directly out of Loch Ness. The same body of water where, centuries later, the whole world would become obsessed with finding a monster. But the creature wasn't finished with the Highlands. Centuries later, it would resurface in a way the whole world would see. Fast forward to 1933. The Scottish government had just built a new road along the northern shore of Loch Ness. For the first time in history, regular people could easily access this remote highland lake. And that's when everything changed. George Spicer and his wife were driving along this new road when they saw something that defied explanation. They described a massive creature with a long neck and humped body crossing the road in front of their car, heading toward the loch. Mrs. Spicer was so terrified she couldn't speak for several minutes. Now, the local newspaper picked up their story, and suddenly everyone was talking about the Loch Ness Monster. But it wasn't until 1934 that the world really went crazy. Robert Kenneth Wilson, a London gynecologist, claimed he'd photographed the creature. The image showed what appeared to be a long neck and small head rising from the water. The press called it the surgeon's photograph, and it became the most famous piece of evidence for Nessie's existence. That single image created the legend of Nessie as we know it today. People flocked to the loch, hoping to catch a glimpse. Books were written, documentaries were made, and an entire tourism industry was born. But decades later, the truth about that photo would leave people stunned. Alright, so for 60 years, that surgeon's photograph was considered the holy grail of Nessie evidence. Scientists debated it, believers treasured it, and skeptics tried to debunk it. Then in 1994, something incredible happened. Christian Sperling, the stepson of Marmaduke Wetherell, made a deathbed confession. He revealed that the famous photograph was completely fake. They'd built a toy submarine, attached a sculpted head and neck, and photographed it in the shallow waters near the shore. Wetherell had been hired by the Daily Mail to find the monster, but when his initial evidence was debunked, he wanted revenge. So he created the hoax that fooled the world for 6 decades. But here's the thing that's really interesting, even after this confession, people kept seeing things in Loch Ness. Tim Dinsdale filmed what he claimed was a moving hump in 1960. Sonar operators detected large, moving objects that didn't match any known fish or underwater debris. If the most famous evidence was a hoax, why were scientists still picking up strange readings in the loch? Now here's where things get really fascinating. Despite all the hoaxes and debunked photos, serious scientists couldn't ignore the consistent sonar readings and eyewitness accounts. So they decided to hunt Nessie with actual science. In 1987, Operation Deepskin brought 20 boats equipped with advanced sonar to sweep the entire loch. They detected 3 large, unidentified contacts moving in the water. These weren't small fish or floating logs. We're talking about objects the size of small whales, moving in coordinated patterns. The scientists were baffled. They'd expected to either find clear evidence of a large creature or definitively prove nothing was there. Instead, they found something in between, something they couldn't explain. Dr. Robert Rines from the Academy of Applied Science spent decades using underwater cameras and sonar in the loch. His team captured images that appeared to show large moving objects, including what looked like flippers and a long neck. The evidence wasn't conclusive, but it was consistent. You know what's crazy? The more technology they threw at Loch Ness, the more mysterious it became. Sonar couldn't solve it, underwater cameras couldn't solve it, and even satellite imaging couldn't definitively answer the question. But then scientists realized they'd been thinking about this all wrong. If sonar couldn't solve it, maybe something far smaller than a monster could. Enter Professor Neil Gemmell from the University of Otago in New Zealand. In 2018, he brought a completely different approach to Loch Ness: environmental DNA testing. See, every living creature leaves traces of DNA in the water through skin cells, scales, and waste. If there was a large, unknown creature living in Loch Ness, its DNA would be floating around in the water. Gemmell's team collected 252 water samples from different depths and locations throughout the loch. They used cutting-edge genetic sequencing technology to identify every species present in the water. This wasn't just looking for monsters, this was creating a complete genetic map of Loch Ness. The results were fascinating and disappointing at the same time. They found no DNA from plesiosaurs, which is what many people thought Nessie might be. No DNA from any large, unknown reptiles. No evidence of any prehistoric survivors living in the depths. But they did find something interesting. Massive amounts of eel DNA. Way more than you'd expect in a typical freshwater lake. Could the world's most famous monster really just be a giant eel? Okay, so this might sound ridiculous at first, but hear me out. European eels are incredible creatures. They're born in the Sargasso Sea, migrate thousands of miles to European rivers and lakes, and can live for over 100 years. Now here's the wild part: these eels never stop growing. In perfect conditions, with abundant food and no predators, they can reach enormous sizes. We're talking about eels that could be 20 feet long or more. Think about it. A massive eel surfacing to breathe could easily be mistaken for a monster's neck and head. Its undulating movement through the water would create the humped appearance that so many witnesses describe. And eels are incredibly elusive, spending most of their time hidden in the murky depths. The DNA evidence strongly supports this theory. Professor Gemmell found so much eel DNA in Loch Ness that he suggested there might be unusually large specimens living there. But even with this scientific explanation, some people weren't satisfied. And honestly, some of the historical evidence still doesn't fit the eel theory perfectly. Look, the DNA study was groundbreaking, but it didn't explain everything. Tim Dinsdale's 1960 film still shows something moving through the water in a way that doesn't match typical eel behavior. The sonar contacts from Operation Deepskin detected objects that seemed too large and moved too systematically to be eels. And then there's the loch itself. Loch Ness is 755 feet deep in some places, darker than the North Sea, with water so murky that visibility is limited to just a few feet. It's connected to the ocean through the River Ness, meaning marine creatures could theoretically enter and leave. The bottom of the loch has never been fully explored. There are underwater caves, ancient rock slides, and geological formations that could hide almost anything. You know what I think happened here? The DNA study probably solved 90% of the Nessie sightings. Giant eels, floating logs, boat wakes, and psychological factors like expectation and folklore explain most encounters. But that remaining 10%? Those truly unexplained sightings and sonar contacts? They keep the mystery alive. So here's the thing about the Loch Ness Monster. Science may have cracked the mystery, but the legend will never die. Because Nessie isn't just about what's in the water, it's about what's in us. Our need to believe in something bigger, something hidden, something magical. The real truth is that Loch Ness probably doesn't harbor any prehistoric monsters. The DNA evidence is pretty conclusive on that front. But it might harbor some unusually large eels, and it definitely harbors one of humanity's most enduring mysteries. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people visit Loch Ness, hoping to catch a glimpse of something impossible. They peer into those dark waters with the same wonder that drove St. Columba to investigate strange stories 1,400 years ago. And you know what? Even knowing about the DNA study, even understanding the eel theory, I still get chills thinking about what might be moving through those depths. Because some mysteries are more powerful than their solutions. The Loch Ness Monster may not exist in the way we imagine, but the legend lives on. And maybe that's exactly how it should be. If this deep dive into one of the world's greatest mysteries fascinated you, make sure to share this video and let others know what science really discovered in Loch Ness. What do you think? Are you convinced by the eel theory, or do you still believe something else might be lurking in those depths? Don't forget to subscribe for more investigations into the world's most puzzling mysteries. Because the truth is out there, and sometimes it's stranger than we ever imagined. Thanks for joining me on this journey to the dark waters of Loch Ness. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember that sometimes the best mysteries are the ones we never fully solve.